June 6, 1944. As Allied troops storm the beaches of Normandy, Hitler does nothing. Why? Because he's waiting for Patton. But Patton's army doesn't exist. The tanks are rubber, the landing craft are props, and Hitler has fallen completely for what might be the greatest lie ever told in military history. By 1944, the Allies faced an impossible military challenge. Nazi Germany had transformed the western coast of Europe into an impenetrable fortress. The Atlantic Wall, as Hitler called it, stretched over 1,600 miles from Norway to the Spanish border, lined with millions of mines, thousands of concrete bunkers, artillery nests and anti-tank traps designed to shred any invasion. Yet the Allies had no choice but to break through if they wanted to defeat Nazi Germany. The Dieppe raid of 1942 had already delivered a brutal warning. Of the 6,000 Allied troops, most of them Canadian, nearly 60% were killed, wounded or captured. German guns on the cliffs above tore them apart. The beaches were littered with bodies. Dieppe proved that storming fortified coastlines could lead to catastrophe. Military planners projected that a full-scale invasion could cost up to 100,000 casualties in its opening hours if German forces were waiting. General Eisenhower even prepared a statement taking full responsibility in case the landings failed. The note, dated June 5, 1944, sat in his pocket as the assault began, a quiet reminder of just how uncertain the mission was. Hitler had deployed 58 divisions across Western Europe. More dangerous still, the Germans could rapidly move reinforcements. Panzer divisions could crush any beachhead before it gained traction. Field Marshal Erwin Rommel, responsible for the Atlantic Wall, made the stakes chillingly clear. The first 24 hours of the invasion will be decisive. For the Allies and for Germany, it will be the longest day. Complete surprise was impossible. German reconnaissance aircraft photographed British ports almost daily. Their spies tracked Allied buildup. The only mystery was where the hammer would fall, and that uncertainty gave the Allies one chance. They couldn't hide the invasion, but maybe, just maybe, they could trick Hitler into looking the wrong way. To do that, they needed to draw German forces away from Normandy and make Calais, the closest point to England, look like the real target. Meanwhile, the true invasion would hit the beaches of Normandy, where defenses were slightly thinner. By spring 1944, southern England had become one vast military camp. Nearly 3 million men, backed by thousands of ships and aircraft, gathered for the assault. Rural roads were jammed with vehicles. Tent cities sprawled across the countryside. Ammo dumps, fuel tanks, and camouflaged barracks appeared overnight. The Germans could see the buildup, but they couldn't tell where it was headed. Allied commanders knew that military might alone wouldn't be enough. They needed deception, deep, layered, believable, to make Hitler commit his reserves away from Normandy and keep them there long enough for the real landings to succeed. British intelligence came up with a bold idea: invent an entire phantom army poised to strike at Calais. Every form of intelligence the Germans relied on would be fed the lie: aerial photos, radio chatter, spies, even staged diplomatic leaks. But even the perfect lie needs the perfect liar. And for that, the Allies had just the man: General George S. Patton, the one American general the Germans feared more than any other. The Phantom Army, the first US Army Group, or FUSAG, would exist only on paper, under Patton's command, aimed squarely at Calais. The Normandy landings would be sold as nothing more than a distraction. And in the end, the success of D-Day would depend not on tanks or guns, but on an illusion. General George S. Patton occupied a unique position in the minds of Nazi military leaders. While Eisenhower served as the supreme Allied commander and Montgomery led British forces, it was Patton who generated the most concern within German high command. The Germans had carefully studied the personalities and tactics of Allied generals, creating detailed psychological profiles that assess their strengths, weaknesses, and likely strategies. In these assessments, Patton emerged as the commander they considered most unpredictable and dangerous. German intelligence called Patton America's most aggressive general and a modern Hannibal. His rapid armored campaigns in Sicily earned their respect and fear. One captured officer even said Patton fought like a German. This obsession made him the perfect centerpiece for Allied deception. Any force under Patton's command would grab German attention. If he was in charge of the army gathering opposite Calais, Hitler would assume that's where the blow would fall. In August 1943, Patton slapped 2 soldiers suffering from combat fatigue, calling them cowards. The scandal forced Eisenhower to remove him from command, but the timing was ideal. Now, Patton could play a prominent role in the upcoming operation without raising suspicion. The Germans assumed Patton's disgrace was a ruse, a cover for his true role as commander of the main invasion. They expected him to lead the real assault. German intelligence tracked his every move in England. They noted his arrival, public appearances, and supposed inspections of units in southeast England. Hitler, impressed by Patton's aggressiveness, believed he would lead the decisive push into France. Field Marshal von Rundstedt later admitted, "We considered Patton the enemy's most dangerous general." Allied planners made Patton the face of Operation Fortitude South, appointing him commander of FUSAG, a force that didn't exist but was said to consist of 11 divisions stationed in southeast England across from Calais. Patton's assignment: be seen, be loud, and let the Germans draw their own conclusions. He was briefed in January 1944. Frustrated but dutiful, Patton wrote in his diary, "I would rather command the 1st US Army Group, even though it does not exist, than any other actual army group." Patton made high-profile appearances near the supposed FUSAG camps. He even dropped hints about Calais as the invasion target, fully aware German ears were listening. Photographers captured Patton touring fake camps and equipment sites in the southeast, far from the real invasion prep in the southwest. Everything he did bolstered the illusion that Patton was preparing to strike at Calais. When the invasion began, Patton was still in England. His real unit, the 3rd Army, wouldn't activate until after Normandy was secure, allowing the Allies to keep up the charade a little longer. But one man couldn't fool Hitler alone. The real challenge was building a phantom army around him, one convincing enough to pass aerial recon. Radio surveillance and human intelligence, all crafted for one audience only: Adolf Hitler. Creating a fictional army posed a massive logistical and creative challenge. FUSAG had to look completely real, not just to German reconnaissance flights, but to spies, analysts, and military planners. The illusion had to hold up across every intelligence channel the Germans used. The most visible part of the deception was physical. Operation Quicksilver, the code name for this effort, turned southeast England into a giant stage set. Special teams of artists, engineers, and set designers created over 2,300 inflatable tanks, vehicles, and artillery pieces. Made of rubber and canvas over frames, these props looked identical to real Sherman tanks when photographed from the air. They weren't just placed randomly. Crews arranged them in formations that mimicked real US military layouts. Fake maintenance depots, supply dumps, and command posts completed the illusion. Camouflage netting was draped just imperfectly enough to invite a look. Tire tracks were carved into the soil. Paths connected vehicle clusters. Some dummies were even heated from below to fool infrared scans. The deception extended to the coast. Along the eastern shore of England, fake landing craft lined up in harbours facing Calais. These wooden frames, covered in canvas, resembled real invasion boats from above. Their placement suggested a looming cross-channel attack at pas-de-calais, exactly where Hitler expected. And if the Germans needed more clues, the Allies left them. Camouflage was applied just poorly enough to let reconnaissance accidentally spot the gear. These deliberate imperfections, known as showing while hiding, worked brilliantly. The Germans thought they were discovering secrets. But props alone weren't enough. The Allies backed it up with sound. Operation Sky, the signals deception arm, created a full-blown radio network. Operators generated thousands of scripted messages, troop movements, supply issues, training logs, all using authentic protocols the Germans could intercept and decode. The radio traffic mirrored the buildup of a real army. Messages escalated over time, reinforcing what German analysts saw in the air. Every complaint, request, and coordination memo helped sell the story: a massive force poised to strike Calais. Fake airfields with dummy aircraft, fuel depots placed in plain sight, and visible supply routes completed the picture, all while the real invasion force hid under deep camouflage in the southwest. The magic of Operation Fortitude wasn't just in the props or signals, it was the harmony. German analysts comparing aerial photos, intercepted radio traffic, and agent reports saw everything line up. The harmony made the lie feel real. Still, the planners knew rubber tanks and fake radios could only go so far. For the deception to fully convince Hitler, it needed a human voice, someone inside his trusted spy network confirming what his eyes already told him. Enter the double agents. Rubber tanks and fake radio chatter could fool cameras and analysts, but not Hitler alone. The Phantom Army needed a voice, a human voice, someone the Germans already trusted, reporting from inside England, confirming what their planes and radios told them. Fortunately for the Allies, they already had that person. In fact, they had several. By 1944, British intelligence had turned every single German agent operating in the United Kingdom, turning them into double agents who now worked against the Nazis. This became known as the Double Cross system, managed by the 20 Committee, so named because the Roman numeral XX literally formed a double cross. These spies, now under British control, didn't just lie to German intelligence, they lied in harmony, each reinforcing the others, feeding the exact same story: Patton's army was real, Calais was the target. The most legendary of these agents was Juan Puyol Garcia, known by the code name Garbo. A failed Spanish businessman with no formal training, Garbo had offered to spy for the Allies and was initially rejected. So he did the unthinkable. He faked his own spy network, sending made-up reports to the Nazis from Lisbon. Eventually, MI5 noticed and brought him to London. By 1944, Garbo had created a web of 27 imaginary sub-agents. He invented names, personalities, and backstories for all of them. When one of them missed a report, Garbo sent word that the man's wife had died and even planted a fake obituary in the British newspaper to prove it. His attention to detail was so convincing that German intelligence awarded him the Iron Cross, making him one of the only people ever decorated by both sides during the war. Garbo's fictional agents reported troop movements, equipment stockpiles, and updates from southeastern England, all aligned with the fake build-up of Fusag. He wasn't alone. Another double agent, Roman Zaniowski, codenamed Brutus, had been a Polish Air Force officer captured by the Gestapo. They sent him to Britain to spy, but he immediately turned himself in. With his military background, Brutus gave German handlers the kind of technical information they craved: order of battle details, equipment strengths, and insider assessments, all fabricated to support Operation Fortitude. The 20 Committee coordinated everything with surgical precision. Agents like Garbo and Brutus were told exactly what to report and when. Their stories matched the fake radio messages. They referenced landmarks near the dummy landing craft. They described tanks that didn't exist, soldiers who weren't real, units stationed in places that only seemed busy. As D-Day approached, the double agents escalated their reports. Just before June 6th, Garbo sent a last-minute warning that an Allied landing was imminent. But the British deliberately delayed the message. It reached Berlin after the Normandy landings had already begun. That timing made the landings look like a feint, exactly as planned. Even after Allied forces stormed the beaches, the double agents kept up the act. Garbo continued sending updates about Patton's Phantom Army, insisting the real invasion was coming at Calais. Brutus reinforced the message. The German High Command remained convinced that Normandy was a diversion. The result? Hitler kept his 15th Army, including key panzer divisions, locked in place near Calais for weeks. The success of Operation Fortitude didn't hinge on a single lie. It worked because of hundreds of small ones, each delivered by a trusted source, each aligned with what the Germans saw and wanted to believe. The ultimate test of Operation Fortitude came in the early hours of June 6, 1944. As Allied forces hit the beaches of Normandy, Adolf Hitler faced a decision that would shape the outcome of the war. Was this the real invasion, or just a diversion? For months, the Allies had staged an elaborate lie, and now that lie faced its moment of truth. At first, the German High Command wasn't convinced. Reports of paratroopers in Normandy trickled in, but General Alfred Jodl, Hitler's operations chief, dismissed them. Exactly what the Allies had hoped, he'd think. Meanwhile, in Normandy, German officers saw the scale of the landings and called for reinforcements, but Erwin Rommel, commander of Army Group B, was in Germany visiting his wife. Field Marshal Gerd von Rundstedt asked to deploy panzer divisions immediately. He couldn't. Hitler alone could authorize that, and Hitler was asleep, sedated by sleeping pills. By the time he woke up, it was late morning. Briefed on the situation, he hesitated. Intelligence reports, fake ones carefully planted, reinforced his belief. German analysts still saw signs of a massive force in southeast England. They believed Patton's 1st US Army Group was poised to strike across the narrowest part of the Channel. Back on the beaches, Allied commanders held their breath. They knew German armor could crush the landings if it arrived too soon, but Hitler's indecision bought them precious hours. At Omaha Beach, American soldiers clawed their way up the cliffs. No panzers arrived to stop them. Intercepted communications later confirmed it. Hitler believed the Normandy landings were a distraction and that Patton's main force remained in reserve. The real cost of that mistake? The 15th Army. 19 divisions, including elite panzer units, stayed parked near Calais. They never moved. Hitler ordered them to hold position, convinced Patton would soon launch the real invasion. That force made up nearly a third of German troops in France, and it sat idle. By nightfall on June 6th, Hitler finally authorized some reinforcements to Normandy, but it was too late. The 21st Panzer Division didn't move until the evening, and by then, the Allies had dug in. Defensive lines were forming. The moment had passed. And still, the Germans waited for Patton. In the days that followed, Hitler kept 7 more divisions locked near Calais. Hitler clung to the illusion. He even issued new orders. The 15th Army was not to move. An enemy landing, he warned, is still expected in its area. The lie had taken on a life of its own. Even after the Allies had a solid foothold, even as tanks rolled inland, German commanders still believed Normandy had been a diversion. By trusting a phantom army and ignoring the real one, Hitler made the most damaging miscalculation of the Western Front. It gave the Allies exactly what they needed: time. Time to land 156,000 troops, time to move 20,000 vehicles, time to build a beachhead they'd never lose. Fortitude didn't just fool Hitler, it broke the German response before the first shot was fired. The success of Operation Fortitude carries a remarkable legacy, not just in strategic gains, but in lives spared. Historians have long asked, what if the German 15th Army had responded to the Normandy landings? What if Hitler hadn't taken the bait? The answers paint a chilling picture of what might have been. The 15th Army was a formidable force, 19 divisions including multiple panzer units stationed near Calais. Had Hitler recognized Normandy as the true invasion site, these troops could have reached the front within 48 hours. Their arrival during the chaotic early days might have crushed the vulnerable Allied beachheads. Logistical assessments suggest German reinforcements could have doubled the combat power facing the Allies that week. Isolated beaches could have been wiped out before the invasion linked up. Instead, the Germans held back. On D-Day, Allied forces suffered around 10,000 casualties, including 4,414 confirmed dead. Pre-invasion estimates had projected up to 100,000. Operation Fortitude didn't fire a shot, but it saved thousands of lives before a single boot hit the sand. By June 12th, 6 days in, the Allies had landed over 326,000 troops, 54,000 vehicles, and more than 100,000 tons of supplies. That build-up would have been impossible if the 15th Army had struck from day one. Military leaders on both sides later agreed, had Hitler committed his Calais forces earlier, the invasion might have failed. Yet Hitler held firm. Even 2 weeks after D-Day, German High Command still expected a second, larger landing at Calais. 7 divisions stayed parked, and the opportunity to strike was lost. The deception had done more than delay orders, it had paralyzed German strategy. Convinced Patton's army was still waiting to cross the Channel, commanders refused to commit fully in Normandy. Estimates vary, but most military historians agree Fortitude likely prevented 30,000 to 50,000 additional Allied casualties. And the impact didn't stop at the front lines. With fewer German troops in the area, Normandy towns were spared heavier bombardment, civilian casualties dropped, historic villages remained intact. Fortitude proved a profound truth. A well-crafted deception can do what armies alone cannot. It can shift entire battlefields without firing a single bullet. But perhaps most incredible of all, no one knew. Operation Fortitude remained top secret for decades. The British government kept a tight lid on everything, especially the double agent network. Not until the 1980s did the full story come to light. That a fake army made of rubber tanks, scripted radio chatter, and carefully placed lies changed the course of the war and saved thousands of lives in the process. Well, that's it. Thanks for watching. We hope you found this video informative. If you enjoyed learning about today's topic, make sure to check out our other video, how 22 American soldiers stopped an entire German panzer division. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to our channel, and hit the notification bell to stay updated on more World War II content, and we will see you in the next one.